In the year 2505, the galaxy had fallen under the rule of the Zorathian Empire, a technologically advanced and ruthless alien race. The Zorathians controlled hundreds of planets, their influence stretching across multiple star systems. Their military was unstoppable, and they ruled with an iron fist. However, the Zorathians had a flaw: their arrogance. They viewed humans as insignificant creatures, incapable of posing any real threat. Humanity, with its short lifespan and primitive weapons, was deemed expendable. The Zorathians had long dismissed Earth as a backwater planet with no real value, but they were wrong. When the Zorathians began their conquest of the galaxy, they found that humanity had spread out across several planets, creating colonies on the fringes of the galaxy. These humans had endured wars, famines, and invasions, but they had always survived. The Zorathians, believing they could crush them with ease, issued an ultimatum: surrender or face destruction. Expecting a swift and easy victory, the Zorathians began the bombardment of Earth and its colonies. They provided the humans with a token army, armed with outdated weapons and obsolete technology, just enough to show their mercy, but enough to crush them if they resisted. Captain Riley Hayes of the Human Resistance stood before her commanders in the hidden underground command center. A weathered, battle-hardened leader, she had witnessed humanity's last stand against the Zorathians. Her people were equipped with nothing but basic firearms, primitive tanks, and old fighter jets, all relics of a forgotten war. It was laughable in the eyes of the Zorathians, but Hayes knew something they didn't. "Outdated weapons or not," she said, "we've got something they don't: the will to survive and a mind that refuses to quit." Humanity had fought back in small skirmishes, and although they had lost every battle, they were learning. They were adapting. Their tactics weren't based on overwhelming firepower, but on intelligence and unpredictability. The Zorathians might have better weapons, but humanity had one thing they didn't: ingenuity. "We'll make them fear us," Hayes promised her. "Commanders. We have to show them that we don't need their technology to beat them." In a remote corner of the galaxy, the Zorathian overlord, Vera, watched with amusement as the human resistance continued to make futile attempts to fight back. She had sent a crushing force to obliterate the last human stronghold on the planet Ravenna 4. The humans were no match for her technology, she thought. They were nothing but insects. On the surface of Ravenna 4, humanity's resistance launched an attack on a Zorathian supply convoy. At first glance, it seemed like an act of desperation, an assault using ancient tanks and improvised explosives against an army of high-tech battle droids and energy weapons. The odds were overwhelmingly against them, but Captain Hayes had a plan. She knew that Zorathians relied heavily on predictability. Their tactics were rigid, their technology highly specialized but inflexible. So, Hayes used this to her advantage. She coordinated a strike where humans disguised themselves as Zorathian soldiers using modified exoskeletons to blend in. The Zorathians had never seen anything like it. The human force infiltrated the supply convoy, setting off explosive charges at the right moments, and while the Zorathian army was distracted, the humans snatched critical supplies: ammunition, fuel, and alien technology. Vera, witnessing the failure of her forces, could hardly comprehend it. How could a primitive species have outsmarted the mighty Zorathian Empire? Vera's rage grew as the reports came in. The humans had somehow turned the low-tech weapons they'd been given into something dangerous, disrupting Zorathian command systems, stripping energy sources, and using the environment to trap their enemies. "They know how to make things unpredictable, and that's what makes them dangerous," one of her generals reported. "The humans have taken advantage of every mistake, using sabotage and hit-and-run tactics effectively." Captain Hayes knew that this was just the beginning. The Zorathians had underestimated humanity, believing they could simply crush them with overwhelming firepower. But now humanity had proven something far more dangerous: that they could outwit the Zorathians at every turn. Hayes and her team began to orchestrate a counteroffensive, a series of calculated strikes aimed directly at Zorathian military supply lines, weapon depots, and even their communication satellites. Using their knowledge of Zorathian technology, the humans began to turn the tide of the war. They weren't winning with brute force, but with clever tactics, sabotage, and guerrilla warfare. The Zorathian Empire found themselves facing an enemy that didn't obey the rules. Hayes's tactics were unpredictable, and that unpredictability became the greatest weapon in humanity's arsenal. The humans' small, outdated ships now began taking down Zorathian war cruisers. Their ancient fighters used stealth techniques to evade detection while planting explosive charges deep inside the Zorathian fleet. One fateful day, humanity launched a final decisive strike against the Zorathian capital itself. Using the stolen Zorathian technology, they hijacked Zorathian war drones, reprogrammed them, and turned them against their creators. The Zorathians were blindsided, their own weapons used against them in a final, devastating blow. When the Zorathian Overlord Vera saw the destruction on her home planet, she realized the terrible truth. Humanity had learned how to turn their weakness into strength. In the aftermath of the attack, Captain Hayes stood at the ruins of Zorathian command centers, her heart pounding with the realization that humanity had now earned its place in the galaxy. The Zorathians no longer saw humanity as insignificant. They saw them as the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. Humanity was now on the rise, and the Zorathian Empire was on the retreat. The humans had shown the universe that they didn't need superior technology to defeat a superior force. All they needed was human ingenuity.